Here are the 5 opportunities in my life that I've missed out on due to being anxious and shy. When I was in my mid 20s, I decided to work at a homeless shelter. Um, I wanted to help people, but mostly I just needed a job. And my sister happened to be working at the shelter in Phoenix at the time, and I was like, oh, I'll work there. Sure, I want to get away from doing construction. And so I went and I started working there. And I kind of fell in love with the place I worked at because it was a very relaxed job to have. But at the same time, I kind of discovered that I like to help people. I like to help tutor people. I realized that because at the time, and even up until that point, I was taking a bunch of math courses, engineering courses. I was completing my associates in science at the time. So I had already taken, calculus all the way through Calc 3, differential equations, linear algebra. I had taken those things before even starting the position. Um, and I realized, I was like, hey, this is a great place to tutor. So I was able to tutor adults, teenagers, ended up starting a program, working there that worked with like young kids, teaching them to go to the outdoors, teaching them science, and again helping with homework, stuff like that. So this was like it ended up being like my dream job that I didn't expect to even like. And so I worked there for a little while. So after, you work anywhere for a long time, things start to get old. You're dealing with the clients' behaviors, the residents that live there. You start to hear and see the same things, and everything starts to repeat itself. You see the kids you work with get older, they have kids, move back into the shelter, and you're like, oh, I wanted you to be a doctor, and now you're in here with 3 or 4 or 5 kids. So it became kind of heartbreaking. So I decided to approach it differently. I'm like, oh, I'll go work at, I will go and I will try to work at a place where I can work more directly with kids and help people who really are looking for that more direct help. So I had the bright idea of becoming a behavior coach, which the very first day after my training, where I was going to get to work with my first client, my first, 11, 12, 13-year-old boy, like, hey, we're going to go and I'm going to help you with your behaviors. I learned a week's worth of, knowledge and how to work with kids that have issues or work with people who are atypical. But for me, mostly because I didn't have a background specifically in behavioral health, they just put me with kids who had behavior issues, but nothing like really intense. So anywho, I ended up working with this young kid that lived on one of the local reservations, and I always kept like a football in my car. I did that before I even worked as a behavioral health coach, and so I left the football in my car, and I'm like, oh, in case I want to just throw the ball around with my friends or something. I'm still in my like late 20s at this point. And so that wouldn't be like an odd thing for me to do, like toss the football around with the guys, because that's what guys do. But it worked out because I ended up being a behavior coach. I'm like, oh, I got a football back there. I'll leave that. I had cones and flags from when I played flag football with some of the kids at the shelter. And so I go and I meet this kid and I take him to this really cool park in Mesa, Arizona. Really cool, this park with one of these like really tall jungle gym things where it looks super dangerous, but like I've seen them pop up in a few cities in the U.S. And it's just like it's really like unbelievably tall jungle gyms. But I don't know, they must have did the math on it and determined that falling from that height you won't die. I don't know. It's weird, but funny. Anyway, so I took this kid there, and he's having a blast. I'm like, oh man, they're paying me pretty good per hour. I'm not like really qualified, but I don't really need to be because this isn't like the kid isn't. I don't want to say he's not atypical, but it's not to the point where I can't handle it. So I'm like feeling good. I'm like, I have found my dream job. Why didn't I do this 10 years ago? And we get to we get to the park. The kid's just like, hey, can I play on the playground? I'm like, oh yeah, man, do your thing. This is do your thing, man. I'm gonna, I'll just keep an eye on you from down here, which I did. I didn't like pull out my phone or anything. I'm just watching him. Next thing you know, this kid is this other kid is just screaming. So I'm looking over, I see my kid, and he's not like doing anything to him. He's just like really close to him. And I ask, hey, what's going on? And this kid's mom comes over. She's like, I'm gonna call the police. And this kid clearly wasn't my child or something. And I also, when as a behavioral health coach, I carry a badge around, and just for other reasons outside the scope of my channel, I just would keep that badge on at all times. It just was a good idea. And the kid I was working with, apparently he just threatened to like kill this kid. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. Something about the kid just triggered him, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna kill you. And I'm like, oh crap. So then when I kind of finally asked him, what's your part of this? What's your story? Did he say something, do something? He's like, oh no, he just, I don't know, I wanted to kill him, And so in that moment, I knew that this behavioral health job was like a serious thing. It wasn't a joke. Because honestly, before that, I was like, oh, this is a joke. Part of coming from, I'm an older millennial, but I still come from a generation where nobody really took mental health seriously. It was sort of like, he just needs to go play some football. He needs to, maybe somebody needs to smack him. These kids got spanked like I did. I was on the tail end of that. Older millennials at this point are early 40s. That just wouldn't have been taken seriously when I was a kid at all. So I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. Even after all the years of working at the shelter, I just was like, it's cool. He just needs some football. So that day, it didn't take very long, but I learned. I was like, this is like a serious thing. And I wasn't equipped to... I ended up working with other kids as well. And I asked to work with older teenagers because I thought that'd be a little closer to what I was doing at the shelter. And it did work out well for me. The older they were, the better. Because it just made it easier for me to approach them if they seemed more like adult. Like, hey, we don't do these things. We don't do this. Your mom doesn't want you to do this. It was just a lot easier to get them to understand that, rather than the younger ones. But I wasn't equipped to do that job. I had my own mental health issues at the time. And a lot of it, I felt like, they could see through that. They could see, they're like, man, you look like you got some stuff going on. How are you going to tell me not to punch my brother in his face or whatever? And I could feel that, coming back from them. They're like, maybe it's the way I'm speaking to them, a lack of confidence. Maybe it's a way I see, or maybe it's the way that I relate. They're like, wow, man, you really understand what it's like really well. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, I dealt with some issues like this before myself. So, that stuff was kind of what kept me from pursuing or staying in the field longer. I knew, I was like, I'm not equipped for this. My anxiety was, I would say my average anxiety at the time wasn't really high, but I just didn't feel like I was in the right place to work with kids. So I think that the behavioral health coaching field would have been a really good opportunity for me, but I just wasn't capable of doing that because I didn't deal with my own issues. Although it would have been like the perfect job. Another job that I actually ended up getting and turning down was a assistant branch manager position at one of the Boys and Girls Club branches in the Phoenix area. And I actually turned that position down because I had already worked as a behavior coach. And I applied for it because I was somewhat qualified, but I turned it down because I already understood about myself that this wouldn't be a good idea. It wouldn't be a good idea, and it would be a high level position with where people who are qualified, that I would be their manager, would be like, man, that guy seems like he's got some mental health issues. He's really great with the kids. He's really great with the employees, but I could see some sort of underlying issue. And so I was like, nah, let me jump into the tech field. And that's kind of why I don't do behavioral health, and how my anxiety, my shyness, my behavioral health issues kept me from really pursuing that kind of position or that kind of career. So in about 2011, I started doing, well, I did some work before 2011, but I always did woodwork. I did, whether it was like building coasters, cutting boards. Before that, I was building like picnic tables, small furniture that didn't have a bunch of moving parts. I wasn't like so good that I could put hinges on something and have it like open and close or whatever. But I was like, you know what? I can make something of this. I'm going to try to pursue a business in making crafts. Now, at the time, I didn't realize that Amazon, Walmart, and all those guys had such a strong hold on the industry. I thought of artisan craft stuff as being very separate from having to deal with Walmart, Amazon, Rakuten, all those guys. And if anything, I thought that those companies would benefit me because I'm like, oh, you can put it on their website and they'll sell it for you. Little did I know, that there was more to that, and they really get the mom and pop people in a weird position. But regardless, I thought, okay, I'll work on building, some items where I think people will want to purchase them, and then I'll sell these items. I went from trying to do it online, sort of your Shopify, Amazon, 3PL, fulfillment by Amazon deal, to, okay, well, what I'll do, I kind of learned that those didn't work because of their fees, at least for me. It works for other people, depending on what you're selling. But for me, it didn't work. The quality of the items I was trying to sell versus the fees. And then the reality was, will a person pay this much for a cutting board from somebody they don't know after all those fees, just so I could make a small profit? Was it worth it? It just wasn't. So I moved on to the idea of, hey, we'll just start doing events. With events, the people who are there to buy stuff. They may be there to drink, eat tacos, or whatever, funnel cake. But they're also there to purchase things. They know that people are going to be selling things. So I was like, oh, boom, there you go. I found my place. I found my way to sell things. Like, I don't have to worry about the 3PL, the fees. I don't have to worry about any of that. All I got to do is make a bunch of whatever I'm selling, get down to this event, and let the products speak for themselves. And so, again, little did I know that I was going to have to go to these really crowded events and really try to get people to, like, hey, you come over here. I want you to take a look at this cutting board. It's pretty flat, huh? And people were like, oh, these are really nice, and then they're like, well, how much? And I'm like, well, this is solid walnut, it's 18 inches by 10 and a half inches by 2.5 inches thick, and I rounded the sides, they're chamfered, and they're just like, oh man, I can go to Walmart right now. So I think after doing those events, I was kind of sort of devastated with the idea of trying to sell things at all, even though, as I kind of pointed out, the reason I mentioned that in these videos is that was finally something that would work. I was going to have to speak to all of these different people and convince them why they should spend $100 on one of my solid walnut or walnut maple cutting boards versus going to Walmart. Now, there are people that appreciate quality products made by people, but I think in the back of all of our minds, we think, oh man, I can get this shipped to my house tomorrow and it's not going to cost this much. And then also, if there's something wrong, I get my money back. It's hard for us to go back to how it used to be back in the day, where we're like, oh, I buy this from this person, and maybe I get screwed over, maybe I don't. Especially with Prime and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's really hard for people to get back into that mindset. So, as far as my anxiety and my shyness go, that was not going to work for me because I was going to have to constantly interact with people. It was going to be a constant thing where I was like, hey you, come over here, you know what I mean? Check out these, check out this walnut board, check out this, maple board. I got some coasters to go with that. Look, they match. They're both from the same tree. It was too much for my personality. I knew that this was the only way I'd be able to sell, other than like friends and family, which isn't realistic when you need to sell like a certain amount to make this like a reasonable thing. This was all pre-COVID, so I guess I made myself feel better later about it because I was like, oh, COVID would have definitely killed my business. So I was able to keep my head high after that because I knew that COVID was going to take care of me anyways. If I had lasted a little bit longer, I could have, that would have been an easier escape plan. Could have kept my pride intact a little better. Another thing that kept me from opportunities due to my shyness and my anxiety was football, like high school football or college football. I was always pretty athletic. Now, I wasn't like your top guy or something like that. But I would say I maybe just like, I was okay. You know what I mean? Good enough to play for like the school. I don't think a lot of people saw that because of how shy I was. I kind of played football with friends at lunch in high school, and they recognized it. But I think that they also recognized that like Nate's not going to do that, And for me, I think the idea of like being on a team with like 100-something people, a 5A like Division I school in a major metropolitan. This is no joke. This isn't, I'm not coming for the schools or the cities that are smaller, the towns. This is like serious stuff. This is when you play for like a high school football team in a city, a major metropolitan, and it's like a big high school. It's not just like you're going out to play football. It's like you're doing some serious stuff. People know who you are. I think the idea behind all of that was just too much for me. I was very shy in the early high school, and then later, as I started to more talk to people, specific people. I didn't talk to everybody, just talked to a few people. I found a nice, safe place to exist, and that was like, hey, I'll play a little football, I'll go to the library, I'll stay after school to be a part of this foreign exchange club, and then I'm gonna go home. There wasn't any, I'm going to participate in some huge event and be out here on the field, trying to kick a field. Like, the idea behind that was, and which sucked, is because I was actually pretty good, and I loved the idea of playing. But I think when I really thought about it, it would have been a mistake. I think even in the last couple of years of high school, I started to recognize that I had some mild mental health issues. Like, I never talked to anybody about my mental health, my anxiety, my being shy. Like I said, I come from a different generation, or the older half of my generation, which is significantly different. And I didn't think that was something that I really needed to have addressed by a professional at the time. But I did. I think I knew enough, even if I didn't consciously, speak it out. I think I knew that playing football would be pushing too far. So I played tennis, which was nice because it was within my comfort zone. It was a sport that kind of was like challenging, but and I had done before. I played it when I was a kid, and it was a small group of people that I could get to know, and it didn't really have big, huge crowds of people that were going to watch us. Plus, our school wasn't very wealthy, so tennis is one of those sports where you need equipment, you need rackets, you need to practice over the summertime between 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So like you'll see that the more poor a school is, the worse their tennis team is. And I didn't go in there having any expectations. I knew when I was gonna win and when I was gonna lose, which is sad, but it was still fun. I got to have fun, hang out with some people that I liked. So the fourth thing is taking it back to the idea of working in human services. And even outside of human services, or I guess any job that I've ever had, I would sell myself short if I knew that I was going to. I basically wouldn't apply for anything, or I wouldn't apply for an internal position where I'd have to talk to huge crowds of people. Like I'd have to do public speaking, or I'd have to like address people in a large meeting place, or a meeting. I just wouldn't do anything that would require me to talk to a whole bunch of people at the same time. So that prevented me from like a ton of opportunities because like think about how many jobs you have, especially managerial positions where it's like, oh, it's part of your job to address team members, staff members. I think when I'm really passionate about something, I feel comfortable speaking to it in a public setting. But I think once it becomes like it's not really a passion, and it's sort of like this is my job. Even if I'm passionate industry wide, I'm not passionate specifically to this position. And so talking to 30, 40, 50 people in a meeting before we start doing a project or working on something or working with people, it was too much for me. So I either consciously or subconsciously just avoided any position where I was going to have to do that. I just flat out just avoided it. That happened in human services with, I would say, at the homeless shelter that I worked at. There were some jobs that I was interested in and somewhat qualified for that I thought about applying for. But again, pushing myself further when it came to anxiety, mental health, it was just too much. And then later, when I worked in technology, I worked in semiconductors, so I worked as a technician. A lot of people's vague, I work in semiconductors. Yeah, you're a technician. But when I worked as a technician for a large semiconductor company, it was the same kind of thing. I think that was sort of an expectation there. I loved the job. I loved the people that I worked with. But I think, again, that came with the position, and it was a bit much for me. I did try to push myself, but I think around that time, my anxiety was already at a high level. The place I worked for had some good opportunities or good things that helped you relax. Like they had a track that I used to walk around, and whenever I felt anxious, I'd take my break or whatever, walk around there. A whole bunch of activities and things within the facility that could help you relax. They had a masseuse. They had what do you call it? They had one of those massage chairs. It sounds like the perfect thing, but like again, so a lot of my mental health issues, my anxiety was so deep that I couldn't. That didn't do it for me. And anyways, back to the idea of trying to take on any position that would require me to speak publicly or speak aloud to a bunch of people. That's just not, it wasn't going to happen. By the time I got to the point where I worked in the semiconductor industry, I was already coming to grips with a lot of things weren't just going to be for me as a person. I was starting to understand at that point, pushing 40 already, mind you, but I was already starting to understand that the things that I was passionate about were becoming more important to me than the things that I was told that I should do in order to maintain a certain lifestyle. So I was already in my mind past the idea of like, oh, you can make this much money if you do this, and that was also a big cause of my anxiety. Um, so even at that point, even working for this like great company, being able to work remotely from home during COVID, I still just was like, you know what? I would like to find myself out there in the world somewhere. I am looking for something else. I'm looking for something else. I wanted to work on my math. Again, for math, for me, if you haven't seen my trailer, for me, it's the math part of my title, the math part of why I'm in Europe, why I'm in Portugal. It's me trying to learn as much math as I can before I die, and it's not like I'm taking that with me when I die or anything like that. It's just that that's always been something that meant a lot for me, and I put that on the back burner for years. The fifth thing I let slip through my grasp was YouTube. I could have started doing YouTube probably in 2018. I had done enough research on YouTube by that point where I could have gotten started earlier. Um, I spent so much time worrying about being anxious, being embarrassed, being putting myself out there. That's a big one. Being out in public. At the time, I thought vlogging meant I had to walk down the street or pull out my camera and irritate everybody at a restaurant or something like that. But it wasn't until later where I was trying to be more clever about it. I was like, if you do this, you do that, and you do these things, mix this in with your channel, this will actually be some pretty good content. So I felt like in the moments where I was like, this is Nate, you can do this, you got this. In the moments where I started to kind of research YouTube, I feel like I let that slip me by because had I just pursued it from 2017, 2018, I would have been a lot further. But things happen as they do, so it's fine. I appreciate you guys subscribing, and I will see you next week. Thanks.